Hello horror lovers, welcome to the channel. Before the terror begins, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, as it will help me a lot. Also, leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from, I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because the crisp autumn air filled my lungs as I stepped onto the trail, blissfully unaware of the horrors that awaited me in Blackwood Forest. The leaves crunched beneath my boots, a symphony of reds and golds carpeting the path ahead. I adjusted my backpack, feeling the comfortable weight of my supplies settling against my spine. Just a quick day hike, I muttered to myself, double-checking the trail map. In and out before sunset, David. No problem. I'd heard stories about Blackwood Forest, of course. Every town has its local legends, and ours was no exception. Tales of hikers going missing, of strange lights in the woods at night, of whispers carried on the wind. But in the bright light of day, with the sun warming my face, those stories seemed nothing more than campfire tales meant to scare children. The first hour of my hike passed uneventfully. I paused to take photos of particularly striking trees or interesting fungi, mentally composing the nature blog post I'd write later. It was during one of these stops, as I crouched to examine a peculiar bracket fungus, that I heard it. Snap. A twig breaking, somewhere off to my left. I straightened, eyes scanning the underbrush. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet forest. "Anyone there?" No response came, save for the rustle of leaves in the light breeze. I chuckled nervously, shaking my head. "Getting jumpy already, David? It's probably just a squirrel." But as I resumed my hike, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the shadows. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, a primal instinct warning of unseen eyes tracking my every move. I picked up my pace, no longer stopping for photos. The pleasant stroll had taken on an air of urgency, though I couldn't quite explain why. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision. I whirled around, heart pounding. "Who's there?" I demanded, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. But there was nothing there, just ancient, gnarled trees stretching as far as the eye could see. "You're letting your imagination run wild," I scolded myself, taking a deep breath to calm my nerves. "There's nothing out here but trees and wildlife." As if in response to my words, an eerie silence fell over the forest. I froze, suddenly aware of the absence of sound. No birds chirping, no rustling leaves, no scurrying small animals. Just an oppressive, unnatural quiet that seemed to press in on me from all sides. "Okay," I whispered, my mouth dry. "Okay, this is weird. Maybe it's time to head back." I turned to retrace my steps, only to find that the path behind me looked unfamiliar. Had I wandered off the trail without realizing it? I pulled out my phone, hoping to use the GPS, but found no signal. Great, just great. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to quell the rising panic in my chest. "Stay calm, David. Pick a direction and stick to it. You'll find your way out." But as the shadows lengthened and darkness began to fall, I realized with growing dread that I had wandered off the main path and was hopelessly lost in the depths of the forest. The trees seemed to loom larger, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers in the fading light. "Hello," I shouted, my voice echoing through the trees. "Can anyone hear me? I need help." The only answer was my own voice, mocking me as it bounced back. And then, just as the last of the daylight faded, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A whisper, so faint I almost missed it, carried on the wind. "Welcome, David. We've been waiting for you." I spun around, searching for the source of the voice, but I was alone in the gathering darkness. Or at least I hoped I was alone, because the alternative, that the forest itself was speaking to me, was too terrifying to contemplate. As night fell completely, I fumbled for my flashlight, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The beam cut through the inky blackness, revealing twisted, menacing shapes in the undergrowth. Shadows danced at the edge of the light, and every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps following close behind. I was no longer a hiker enjoying a day in nature. I was prey, lost in a forest that seemed to have a mind of its own. and as I stumbled through the darkness, one thought echoed in my mind. Would I ever find my way out of Blackwood Forest? Or would I become just another local legend, another hiker who ventured in and never returned? The night stretched on, and my journey into terror had only just begun. Panic set in as I fumbled with my flashlight, the beam cutting through the inky blackness to reveal twisted, menacing shapes in the undergrowth. My hands trembled, causing the light to dance erratically across the forest floor. Each shadow seemed to leap out at me, transforming innocent bushes into crouching monsters. "Get a grip, David," I muttered to myself, trying to steady my breathing. "There's a logical explanation for everything. You just need to stay calm and think." But calm was in short supply as I stumbled through the darkness. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees growing denser with each step. I swept the flashlight beam in wide arcs, searching desperately for any sign of a trail or landmark. That's when I saw them. My breath caught in my throat as I spotted what looked like eyes glinting in the darkness, watching me from every direction. Pinpricks of light reflected in my flashlight beam, blinking in and out of existence as I moved. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking. "Is someone there? I'm lost. I need help." Only silence answered me. I took a tentative step forward, and the eyes seemed to move with me, always staying just at the edge of my vision. "This isn't real," I told myself, squeezing my eyes shut for a moment. "When I open my eyes, they'll be gone. It's just your imagination playing tricks on you." I counted to 3 and opened my eyes. The eyes were still there, more numerous than before, surrounding me on all sides. Okay, I said, trying to reason with myself. "It's probably just animals. Raccoons, maybe. Or owls. Nothing to be afraid of." But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. These weren't the eyes of any animals I'd ever encountered. They were too knowing, too malevolent, and they were getting closer. I tried to calm myself, taking deep breaths and assessing my situation. "Think, David. What would a park ranger do? Find high ground, look for lights from nearby towns. You can do this." Just as I was about to put my plan into action, a low, rumbling growl echoed through the trees. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. Not quite animal, not quite human. The sound reverberated in my chest, setting every nerve on edge. Without thinking, I broke into a run. Branches whipped at my face as I fled from the unseen pursuer, the growl growing louder behind me. I crashed through the underbrush, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly, offering only brief glimpses of the path ahead. "Help!" I screamed as I ran. "Somebody help me!" My foot caught on an exposed root, and I went sprawling. The flashlight flew from my hand, spinning through the air before going out as it hit the ground. I lay there in the pitch darkness, the taste of blood in my mouth, listening to the sound of something large moving through the forest towards me. Panicked, I scrambled to my feet and pressed my back against the nearest tree. My hand brushed against the rough bark, seeking any sense of solidity in the encompassing darkness. "Whatever you are," I said, my voice shaking, "stay back. I'm warning you." The growl came again, closer this time, followed by a sound like laughter, a cold, mirthless chuckle that seemed to come from the forest itself. "David," a voice whispered, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Why do you run? We only want to welcome you properly." I pressed harder against the tree, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure whatever was out there could hear it. "Who are you?" I demanded. "What do you want from me?" "We are Blackwood," the voice replied, "and you are ours now." Exhausted and trembling, I slid down the trunk of the tree, my legs no longer able to support me. As I sat there, I felt the bark shift and move beneath my touch. I recoiled in horror, scrambling away from the tree. "This can't be happening," I gasped. "Trees don't move, they don't talk, this isn't real." But even as I denied it, I could feel the forest closing in around me. The rustling of leaves sounded like whispered conversations, the creaking of branches like footsteps drawing ever nearer. In that moment, as the last shreds of rational thought slipped away, I realized the truth that I had been avoiding since I first set foot in Blackwood Forest. The legends were real. The forest was alive, aware, and it had no intention of letting me leave. As the eyes in the darkness drew closer, and unseen hands seemed to reach for me from every direction, I curled into a ball, squeezing my eyes shut and praying for the dawn. But deep down, I knew that in Blackwood Forest, the coming of day might bring no relief from the terrors of the night. The forest had claimed me, and my nightmare was only beginning. Dawn broke, but the forest remained shrouded in an unnatural gloom, as if the very trees were conspiring to keep out the light. I blinked, disoriented, realizing I must have passed out at some point during the night. My clothes were damp with dew, and every muscle in my body ached from the cold ground. "Hello?" I called out weakly, my voice hoarse. "Is anyone there?" Only the eerie silence of the forest answered me. I struggled to my feet, wincing at the pain in my battered body. The events of the night before came flooding back. The eyes in the darkness, the moving trees, the voice that claimed to be the forest itself. In the pale light of day, it all seemed like a bad dream. "Pull yourself together, David," I muttered, running a hand through my tangled hair. "There has to be a way out of here." I started walking, choosing a direction at random. The forest looked different in the daylight, but no less menacing. The trees seemed to loom over me, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Every snapping twig made me jump. Every rustle of leaves had me spinning around, expecting to see some nightmarish creature lurking behind me. After what felt like hours of aimless wandering, I stumbled upon a clearing. My heart leapt at the open space, hoping it might lead to a way out. But as I stepped into the clearing, my blood ran cold. The ground was littered with bones, some human, others unidentifiable. "No," I whispered, backing away. "This can't be real. This can't be happening." I turned to flee, but something caught my eye. A glint of metal among the bones. I hesitated, then crept closer. It was a locket, tarnished but still intact. With trembling fingers, I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman, smiling at the camera. "I'm so sorry," I said to the photograph, my voice breaking. "What happened to you? What is this place?" A rustling sound drew my attention, and I watched in fascinated horror as roots burst from the earth, dragging a small animal, a rabbit, I thought, into the ground. The creature's terrified squeals were cut short as it disappeared beneath the soil. Realization dawned on me with sickening clarity. The forest wasn't just alive, it was hungry, and I was its next meal. "No," I said, backing away from the writhing ground. "No, I won't let you take me." I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush with no regard for direction. My only thought was to get away from that clearing, away from the proof of the forest's appetite. But as I ran, I noticed something strange. The landscape seemed to shift around me, paths disappearing and reappearing at will. Exhausted, I finally stopped, leaning against a tree to catch my breath. "What do you want from me?" I shouted at the forest. "Why are you doing this?" To my surprise, I received an answer. The wind picked up, rustling through the leaves, and I could have sworn I heard words in the sound. "We hunger," the forest seemed to say. "We have always hungered." I slid down the trunk of the tree, hugging my knees to my chest. "But why me? Why anyone? Can't you just, I don't know, photosynthesize or something?" A low chuckle seemed to emanate from the very ground. "Sweet, naive David, we require more than sunlight and water. We need life, essence, soul." I shuddered at the words. "But you're killing people. That's wrong." "Wrong?" The forest's voice grew harsh. "Was it wrong when your kind cut us down, burned us, paved over our roots? We merely take what we need to survive, as all living things do." I shook my head, trying to clear it. Was I really having a conversation with a sentient, carnivorous forest? Had I lost my mind? "Look," I said, trying to reason with the forest. I understand you're trying to survive, but there has to be another way. Can't we come to some kind of agreement? The forest was silent for a long moment. Then, the voice came again, softer this time. Perhaps there is a way, a bargain of sorts. Hope surged in my chest. A bargain? What kind of bargain? Your freedom, the forest whispered, in exchange for a piece of your soul, a connection that would bind you to us forever. I swallowed hard, considering the offer. Freedom sounded wonderful, but at what cost? What exactly would this connection mean? The leaves rustled again, and I felt a chill run down my spine as the forest responded. You would carry a part of us with you always. In your dreams, in your waking hours. You would be our eyes and ears in the world of men. And when your time comes, you would return to us to become one with Blackwood. It was a terrible choice. Agree to be forever bound to this nightmarish place, or face the prospect of being consumed by it. But as I sat there, surrounded by the hungry forest, I realized I had no real choice at all. All right, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I agree to your bargain. The forest seemed to sigh with satisfaction. Wise choice, David. Now let us seal our pact. As the words faded away, I felt a searing pain in my chest. I cried out, clutching at my heart as I felt something being torn away. And then, just as suddenly, it was over. I stood up on shaky legs, feeling somehow both lighter and heavier than before. The forest around me seemed to part, revealing a path I hadn't seen before. The way out, the forest's voice said. As promised, I took a tentative step towards freedom, then paused, looking back at the depths of Blackwood. Will I ever see you again? I asked, surprised to find a part of me almost reluctant to leave. The wind picked up one last time, carrying the forest's final words to me. Oh, David, we will always be with you now. Always. As I stumbled towards the edge of the forest, I knew my ordeal was far from over. I was free, yes, but at what cost? The bargain I had made would haunt me for the rest of my days, a constant reminder of the hungry darkness that waited in Blackwood Forest. Days blended together as I wandered aimlessly, my hope dwindling with each passing hour. The forest seemed endless, a green maze that shifted and changed with every step. I couldn't shake the feeling that Blackwood was toying with me, leading me in circles despite the bargain we'd struck. You promised me a way out, I croaked, my voice hoarse from dehydration. Was that just another lie? The forest's response came as a whisper on the wind. Patience, David. The journey out is part of the price. I stumbled on, my feet aching and my stomach growling. How long had it been since I'd eaten? Since I'd had a proper drink? Time had lost all meaning in this verdant hell. As I pushed through a thick cluster of ferns, I began to hallucinate from hunger and exhaustion. Faces appeared in the bark of trees, leering at me as I passed. Whispers echoed on the wind, too faint to make out but undeniably there. Stop it, I muttered, pressing my palms against my eyes. You're not real. None of this is real. But when I opened my eyes, the faces were still there, watching me with hollow, accusing eyes. I recognized some of them, the woman from the locket, hikers who had gone missing over the years, even my own face, twisted in a silent scream. What do you want from me? I shouted at the apparitions. I made the deal. I gave you what you wanted. The faces melted away, leaving only the silent trees, but the whispers continued, growing louder until I could make out words. Join us, David. Become one with the forest. It's so much easier than fighting. I shook my head violently, trying to clear it. No, I won't give in. I'm getting out of here. As if in response to my defiance, I spotted a bush laden with dark berries. My stomach clenched painfully at the sight. I knew it was risky to eat anything in this forest, but my hunger overwhelmed my caution. In a moment of desperation, I ate some berries I found, savoring the burst of sweetness on my tongue. For a blissful moment I felt my strength returning. Then the pain hit. I doubled over, clutching my stomach as agony ripped through me. The forest's poison coursed through my veins, setting every nerve on fire. I collapsed to the ground, my body convulsing. "Why?" I gasped between spasms of pain. "We had a deal." The forest's voice seemed to come from inside my own head now. "The bargain was for your freedom, David, not your safety. You must learn to navigate our world if you are to survive in yours." As the pain intensified, I began to see visions. The history of Blackwood Forest played out before my eyes. Centuries of growth and change, the arrival of humans, the slow awakening of the forest's consciousness. I saw the first people it had taken, their terror and confusion as the earth swallowed them whole. I felt the forest's hunger, its loneliness, its rage at the encroachment of civilization. "Stop," I pleaded, tears streaming down my face. "I don't want to see anymore." But the visions continued, relentless. I saw myself entering the forest, oblivious to the danger. I watched our bargain from the forest's perspective, felt its satisfaction as it claimed a piece of my soul. Feverish and delirious, I collapsed by a stream, the water's surface reflecting not my face, but the malevolent visage of the forest itself. In the rippling water, I saw a face composed of leaves and bark, eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "What am I becoming?" I whispered, reaching out to touch the reflection. As my fingers brushed the water's surface, the face in the stream spoke. "You are becoming one of us, David. The bargain binds us together now, more deeply than you know." I tried to pull away, but my body wouldn't respond. As consciousness slipped away, I felt the ground beneath me begin to shift, tendrils of roots slowly enveloping my body. "No," I mumbled, fighting to keep my eyes open. "I don't want this. Let me go." The forest's voice was gentle now, almost loving. "Shh, David. Don't fight it. This is just the beginning of your transformation. When you wake, you'll understand." As darkness claimed me, I heard one last whisper from the forest. "Remember, you're ours now, forever." I wanted to scream, to fight, to run, but the poison in my veins and the roots around my body held me fast. As I slipped into unconsciousness, I realized with horror that this might be the end of David as I knew him. Whatever awoke from this slumber would be forever changed by Blackwood Forest. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was a sea of glowing eyes, watching from the shadows, waiting, hungry. And then, mercifully, I knew no more. I awoke with a start, my head pounding and my mouth dry as sandpaper. Disoriented, I blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I found myself in a cave formed by the twisted roots of an ancient tree, the walls pulsing with a faint, otherworldly glow. "Where am I?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. As if in response to my question, a haunting voice echoed in my mind, introducing itself as the spirit of Blackwood Forest, ancient and ravenous. "Welcome back to the waking world, David," the voice purred, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You've been asleep for quite some time." I struggled to sit up, my body aching with every movement. "How long?" I asked, dreading the answer. The cave seemed to shiver, roots writhing slightly. "Time moves differently here, dear David. What feels like days to you might be weeks in the world outside." A chill ran down my spine at the implication. How long had I been missing? Were people looking for me? I pushed these thoughts aside, focusing on the more immediate concern, the entity communicating with me. "What are you?" I demanded, trying to keep the fear from my voice. "Why have you brought me here?" A low chuckle reverberated through the cave. "I am Blackwood. I am every tree, every leaf, every root in this forest. I am ancient beyond your comprehension, and I have watched your kind for centuries." I swallowed hard, processing this information. "And what do you want with me?" The voice took on a more serious tone. "I want to offer you a bargain, David." A chance at freedom, but at a price. My heart raced at the word freedom. After what felt like an eternity trapped in this nightmare forest, the prospect of escape was almost too good to be true. But I knew better than to trust this entity blindly. "What kind of bargain?" I asked cautiously. The spirit of Blackwood Forest laid out its offer, my freedom in exchange for a piece of my soul, forever binding me to the forest. I laughed bitterly. So, I'd be trading one prison for another? How is that freedom? "You misunderstand," the voice replied patiently. "You would be free to leave the forest, to return to your life, but you would carry a part of us with you always, a connection that can never be severed." I considered this, weighing my options. On one hand, the thought of being forever linked to this place filled me with dread. On the other, it seemed to be my only chance of escape. "What exactly would this connection entail?" I asked, needing to understand the full implications. The spirit explained, its voice taking on an almost seductive quality. "You would be our eyes and ears in the world of men. Through you, we would experience the world beyond our borders. And in return, you would have access to a fraction of our power, the ability to communicate with nature, to sense the life force in all living things." It sounded almost appealing when put that way, but I wasn't fooled. And the catch? There's always a catch. The cave grew colder as the spirit continued. "The connection goes both ways, David. You will never truly be free of us. In your dreams, in your waking hours, we will always be there. And when your mortal life ends, you will return to us, to become one with Blackwood forever." I shuddered at the thought. Eternity, as part of this sentient, hungry forest, was a terrifying prospect. But as I sat there surrounded by living roots and glowing fungi, I realized I had no real choice. It was this, or remain trapped in Blackwood until I died, or worse. Torn between certain death and an eternity of torment, I reluctantly agreed, feeling a part of myself being ripped away as the pact was sealed. I accept your bargain," I said, my voice trembling. The moment the words left my lips, I felt a searing pain in my chest. I cried out, clutching at my heart as I felt something being torn from me. It was as if a piece of my very essence was being ripped away. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. I gasped for air, feeling fundamentally changed. The world around me seemed sharper, more vivid. I could feel the life force pulsing through the roots around me, could hear the whispers of the wind through distant leaves. "It is done," the spirit of Blackwood intoned solemnly. "You are now a child of the forest, David. Never forget the bond we share." As if on cue, the twisted roots forming the cave began to part, revealing a path I hadn't seen before. Sunlight streamed in, so bright it hurt my eyes after so long in the gloom. "The way out," the forest voice said, as promised. I stood on shaky legs, taking a tentative step towards freedom. But as I reached the threshold, I paused, looking back into the depths of the cave. "Will I ever see you again?" I asked, surprised to find a part of me almost reluctant to leave. The wind picked up, carrying the forest's final words to me. "Oh, David, we will always be with you now. Always." As I stumbled towards the edge of the forest, my mind reeled with the implications of what I'd done. I was free, yes, but at what cost? The bargain I had made would haunt me for the rest of my days, a constant reminder of the hungry darkness that waited in Blackwood Forest. I emerged from the tree line, blinking in the harsh sunlight of the outside world. As I took my first steps back into civilization, I could feel the forest's presence lingering in the back of my mind, a silent observer to the life I was returning to. My ordeal in Blackwood was over, but I knew in my heart that my journey, our journey, was only just beginning. Back in civilization, I tried to resume my normal life, but the memories of Blackwood Forest haunted my every waking moment. It had been 3 weeks since I stumbled out of the woods, emaciated and wild-eyed, babbling about living trees and forest spirits. The doctors had chalked it up to dehydration and exhaustion, but I knew the truth. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, studying my reflection. I looked normal enough. My beard was neatly trimmed, my hair combed. But my eyes, there was something different about them now. A hint of green where there used to be only brown, a depth that hadn't been there before. "You're just imagining things," I muttered to myself, splashing water on my face. But as I lowered my hands, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror, a flash of leaves and branches where my reflection should have been. I spun around, heart racing, but there was nothing there. "Get it together, David," I said, gripping the edges of the sink. "You're home. You're safe." A low chuckle seemed to emanate from the walls. "Are you ever truly safe now, David?" I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the voice. But it was futile. The forest was always there, always watching. As the days passed, I began to notice strange changes in myself. My skin took on a bark-like texture in places, rough and ridged. One morning I woke to find leaves sprouting from my hair, delicate and green. Panicked, I called in sick to work and spent hours in front of the mirror, plucking each leaf out with trembling fingers. "This isn't happening," I repeated like a mantra. "This can't be real." But it was real. As real as the nightmares that plagued my sleep. Each night, I found myself back in Blackwood, running from unseen predators, sinking into hungry earth, or worse, becoming one with the trees, my body twisted and gnarled, my consciousness scattered among the leaves. I'd wake up screaming, sheets tangled around me, the taste of soil in my mouth, and always the whisper of the forest in the back of my mind. "Embrace it, David," the voice would say. "This is who you are now." I threw myself into research, desperate to understand what was happening to me. I pored over ancient legends, folklore about sentient forests and nature spirits, but nothing quite matched my experience in Blackwood. One night, as I sat surrounded by books and printouts, a soft knock at my door startled me out of my study. "David." It was my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. "Are you all right in there?" I heard shouting. I opened the door a crack, careful to hide the leaves that had begun sprouting from my arms. "I'm fine, Mrs. Thompson, just watching a scary movie." "Sorry for the noise." She peered at me suspiciously. "You don't look well, dear. Are you eating enough?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine, really. Thank you for checking on me." As I closed the door, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My eyes were glowing faintly green in the dim light. I stumbled back, horrified. That's when I noticed it. People around me started to vanish. First, it was just small things. The mailman I used to chat with every morning stopped coming by. Then Mrs. Thompson's apartment went quiet. I couldn't shake the terrifying suspicion that I was somehow responsible. One evening, I was jolted awake by a familiar sensation. The pull of the forest. I found myself sleepwalking on the outskirts of town, my feet inexorably drawn back towards the cursed forest. "No!" I shouted, fighting against the invisible force. "I won't go back." But the pull was strong, and I found myself at the edge of Blackwood once more. The trees seemed to whisper my name, welcoming me back with malicious glee. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, addressing the forest directly. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" The wind picked up, carrying the forest's response. "We are one now, David. You cannot deny your nature any more than a tree can refuse to grow." I sank to my knees, tears streaming down my face. I never asked for this. I just want my life back. A tendril of mist curled around me, almost comforting. Your old life is gone, child of Blackwood, but think of the wonders you can experience now. The secrets of nature are yours to explore. As if to demonstrate, the forest showed me visions, the intricate network of roots beneath the soil, the slow, patient growth of trees over centuries, the delicate balance of ecosystems. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "I can't live like this," I whispered, torn between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. The forest's voice softened. You must find balance, David. Accept what you are, and you will find peace. As dawn broke, I found myself back in my apartment, leaves and twigs tangled in my hair. I looked in the mirror, really looked, for the first time in weeks. The man staring back at me was changed, yes, but he was still me, still David. And perhaps that was okay. I took a deep breath, feeling the energy of growing things thrumming through my veins. All right, Blackwood, I said to my reflection. Let's figure this out together. As I spoke the words, I felt a shift within me. The constant struggle between my humanity and my new nature eased slightly. I wasn't fully human anymore, but I wasn't just a puppet of the forest either. I was something new, something in between, and as I stood there, leaves rustling gently in my hair, I realized that my journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Weeks turned into months as I grappled with my new dual nature. The pull of Blackwood Forest remained constant, a low hum in the back of my mind, but I was learning to coexist with it. My apartment had become a strange hybrid of human dwelling and forest grove, with vines creeping along the walls and small saplings sprouting from forgotten coffee mugs. One crisp autumn morning, I stood by my window, watching leaves dance in the breeze. My reflection in the glass showed a man with bark-like skin and eyes that shimmered with an otherworldly green light. I no longer flinched at the sight. A knock at the door jolted me from my reverie. I hesitated, wary of human contact, but something about the urgency of the knock compelled me to answer. I opened the door to find a young woman, her face etched with worry and exhaustion. "Are you David?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The one who survived Blackwood Forest?" I nodded slowly, unsure of how to respond. The woman's shoulders sagged with relief. "My name is Sarah," she said. "My brother, Mike. He went into Blackwood 3 days ago. He hasn't come back." My heart sank. I knew all too well what that could mean. "Please," Sarah pleaded, her eyes brimming with tears. "You're the only one who's ever come out of that place. Can you help me find him?" I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. The human part of me wanted to help, to prevent another person from suffering the fate I had narrowly escaped. But the forest part, it whispered of secrets, of the natural order, of the folly of interfering. I don't know if I can," I said hesitantly. "Blackwood is dangerous. It's not just a forest, it's a living entity," Sarah finished, her eyes widening. "You've seen it too, haven't you? The way the trees move when no one's looking, the whispers on the wind." I stared at her, shocked. "How do you know about that?" Sarah's expression darkened. "Mike and we grew up on the edge of Blackwood. We've always known it was different, but Mike, he thought he could unlock its secrets. He went in to prove himself right." The forest within me stirred, curious about this woman and her brother who seemed to understand more than most. "If I help you," I said slowly, "you have to understand. I'm not the same person who came out of that forest. I'm changed." Sarah nodded, her eyes taking in my altered appearance. "I can see that, but you're our only hope." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. "All right, I'll help you find Mike. But we do this my way. Blackwood isn't something you can fight or outsmart. We have to work with it, not against it." Sarah agreed, and we set out for the forest's edge. As we approached, I could feel Blackwood's awareness focused on us, curious and wary. "Hello, old friend," I murmured as we stepped under the canopy of leaves. "We need your help." The forest's response was immediate, a rush of whispers and rustling leaves. I translated for Sarah. "It knows we're here. It's intrigued by you." We ventured deeper into the woods, following paths that seemed to appear and disappear at will. I could sense Mike's presence, a faint echo in the forest's consciousness. "He's alive," I told Sarah, relief evident in my voice. "But he's changed, like me." Sarah's face paled. "What does that mean?" Before I could answer, we emerged into a small clearing. There, in the center, stood a young man. But he was barely recognizable as human anymore. His skin had taken on the texture of rough bark, his hair a tangle of leaves and twigs. His eyes, when he opened them, glowed with the same eerie green light as mine. "Mike?" Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. The figure turned, his movements fluid and plant-like. "Sarah? Is that you?" His voice was like the creaking of branches in the wind. I felt the forest's satisfaction, its pride in its newest creation. But I also sensed something else. A flicker of Mike's humanity, struggling to reassert itself. "Mike," I said, stepping forward. "I'm David. I'm like you. We're here to help you." Mike's glowing eyes focused on me, recognition dawning. "Help? But I don't need help. I understand now. I'm part of something greater." Sarah moved towards her brother, but I held her back. "Careful," I warned. "He's not entirely himself right now." I addressed the forest directly, my voice firm. "Blackwood, you can't keep doing this, taking people, changing them against their will. It's not right." The forest's response was a mixture of amusement and defiance. It saw humans as fleeting, insignificant. Why shouldn't it reshape them as it saw fit? But I stood my ground. "Because we have a right to choose our own path. You changed me, yes, but I chose to accept it. Mike hasn't made that choice yet." I could feel the forest considering my words. It was ancient, set in its ways, but not incapable of change. "Let him go," I pleaded. "Let him decide for himself." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the vines and roots that had begun to entangle Mike's feet receded. The glow in his eyes dimmed, and he stumbled forward, caught by his sister's waiting arms. What happened?" Mike mumbled, looking around in confusion. As Sarah explained and comforted her brother, I felt the forest's attention turn to me. It was curious, perhaps even impressed by my stand. "Thank you," I said softly to the trees around us. "This is a start. A new understanding between your world and ours." As we led Mike out of the forest, I felt a shift in my connection to Blackwood. It was still there, still strong, but different now. Less a bond of servitude and more a partnership. I realized then that my role had changed. I was no longer just a victim of Blackwood's hunger, nor merely its eyes and ears in the human world. I had become something else, a bridge between two realms, with the power to foster understanding and prevent future tragedies. As we emerged from the tree line, the sun setting behind us, I knew that my journey with Blackwood was far from over. But for the first time since I'd made that fateful bargain, I felt hope for the future, both mine and the forest's. The rescue of Mike marked a turning point in my relationship with Blackwood Forest. Word spread quickly among those who lived on the fringes of the supernatural world, and soon I found myself becoming a reluctant mediator between humanity and the ancient forest entity. It was a crisp morning in late autumn when I received an unexpected visitor. A sharp knock on my apartment door roused me from my meditation, where I had been communing with a potted oak sapling, a gift from Blackwood itself. I opened the door to find a stern-faced woman in her 50s, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a park ranger's uniform and carried herself with an air of authority. "David Thompson?" she asked, her eyes widening slightly as she took in my appearance, the bark-like texture of my skin, the faint green glow in my eyes. I nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "That's me. How can I help you?" She extended her hand. "I'm Ranger Clara Hawkins. I need to talk to you about Blackwood Forest." As I invited her in, I couldn't help but notice her gaze lingering on the various plants that had taken over my living space. Vines crept along the walls, and a soft layer of moss carpeted the floor. "Interesting decor," she remarked dryly. I shrugged. "It's a long story." Clara cut straight to the chase. "Mr. Thompson, I've been the head ranger at Blackwood National Park for over 2 decades. I've seen things in that forest that defy explanation, but lately things have been different. I felt a flutter of unease. Different how? She pulled out a tablet and showed me a series of photos. They depicted areas of the forest where the trees had formed unnatural patterns, spelling out words in a language I instinctively understood, but couldn't translate. The forest is trying to communicate, I murmured, more to myself than to Clara. She raised an eyebrow. Communicate what exactly? I closed my eyes, reaching out with my mind to touch the essence of Blackwood that always lingered at the edges of my consciousness. It's awakening, becoming more aware of the human world beyond its borders. Clara's expression hardened. Is that a threat? I shook my head. No, not necessarily. It's more like curiosity. Blackwood is ancient, but in many ways it's like a child discovering a new toy. It doesn't fully understand the consequences of its actions. And where do you fit into all this? Clara asked, her eyes narrowing. I took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the best policy. I made a bargain with Blackwood. I'm bound to it now, part human, part something else. I can communicate with it to an extent. Clara was silent for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she spoke. We need your help, Mr. Thompson. The forest is expanding, encroaching on populated areas. We can't explain it through any natural means. I felt a surge of alarm. That's not possible, Blackwood promised. But even as I spoke, I realized the naivety of trusting an ancient, inhuman entity to fully grasp the concept of boundaries. I need to go there, I said, standing up. I need to speak with Blackwood directly. Clara nodded, relief evident on her face. I was hoping you'd say that. I have a vehicle waiting. The drive to Blackwood was tense. As we neared the forest edge, I could feel its presence growing stronger, a symphony of whispers and rustling leaves in my mind. We parked at the ranger station and I stepped out, my bare feet sinking into the soil. The sensation sent a jolt of energy through me, connecting me more fully to the forest. Blackwood, I called out, my voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. We need to talk. The response was immediate. The trees around us began to shift and move, their branches intertwining to form a crude approximation of a face. Clara gasped behind me, but I stood my ground. You're breaking our agreement, I said firmly. You can't expand into human territories. The forest's voice filled my mind, a cascade of images and emotions rather than words. It spoke of loneliness, of a desire to explore and grow. I understand, I said softly, but this isn't the way. You're scaring people. If this continues, they might try to destroy you. A wave of anger and defiance washed over me. The trees creaked ominously. Listen to me, I pleaded. I can help you understand the human world better. We can find a way for you to satisfy your curiosity without causing harm. But you have to trust me. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, I felt a shift in the forest's consciousness. The anger receded, replaced by a cautious agreement. I turned to Clara, who had been watching the one-sided conversation with a mix of fear and fascination. It's agreed to stop expanding, but in return, it wants to learn more about humans. It wants visitors. Clara blinked in surprise. Visitors? To a sentient, potentially dangerous forest? I nodded. Controlled visits, educational programs, a chance for people to understand Blackwood and for Blackwood to understand them. It's the only way to prevent future conflict. Clara rubbed her temples, clearly overwhelmed. This is way above my pay grade, but I'll take it to my superiors. It's better than the alternative. As we prepared to leave, I felt a gentle tug from the forest. I turned back to see a small sapling pushing its way up through the soil. As I watched, it grew rapidly, forming a delicate hand-like shape. I understood the gesture for what it was, a peace offering, a symbol of new beginnings. I knelt down and gently touched the sapling. "Thank you," I whispered. "We'll make this work, I promise." As Clara and I drove back to the city, I felt a newfound sense of purpose. I was no longer just a victim of circumstance caught between two worlds. I had become a bridge, a translator, a peacekeeper. The road ahead would be challenging, fraught with misunderstandings and potential dangers. But for the first time since my fateful encounter with Blackwood, I felt truly optimistic about the future. A future where the ancient and the modern, the natural and the human, could coexist in harmony. It was a lofty goal, perhaps even an impossible one. But as I glanced back at the receding tree line of Blackwood Forest, I knew it was a goal worth pursuing. The next chapter of my strange, wonderful, terrifying journey was about to begin. And this time, I was ready for it. The months following my agreement with Blackwood and Ranger Clara Hawkins were a whirlwind of activity. As promised, I had become the bridge between the sentient forest and the human world, a role that proved both exhilarating and exhausting. On a misty morning in early spring, I stood at the edge of Blackwood, preparing to lead the first official tour group into the living forest. Beside me, Clara fidgeted nervously with her ranger hat. "Are you sure about this, David?" she asked, eyeing the group of eager visitors. "We're basically feeding them to a monster." I chuckled, feeling Blackwood's amusement ripple through the leaves around us. "Blackwood's not a monster, Clara. It's just different, and it's promised to behave." As if on cue, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the sweet scent of new growth. I took it as a good sign. Turning to face the small group of 10 visitors, I cleared my throat. "Welcome to Blackwood Forest," I began, my voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that I had come to accept as part of my new nature. "What you're about to experience is unlike any other forest on Earth. Blackwood is alive, not just in the way all forests are alive, but in a way that is sentient and aware." A murmur of excitement rippled through the group. I could see a mix of emotions on their faces: wonder, skepticism, and more than a little fear. "Before we enter," I continued, "I need you all to understand something crucial. Blackwood is curious about you, just as you are curious about it. It may try to communicate with you in ways that might seem strange or even frightening, but I promise you, as long as you respect the forest, you will be safe." A hand shot up from the back of the group. It belonged to a young woman with bright blue hair and an eager expression. "How exactly does a forest communicate?" she asked. I smiled. "That's an excellent question." "Zoe," she supplied. "Zoe," I nodded. "Blackwood communicates in many ways, sometimes through the movement of leaves and branches, sometimes through scents or sounds. And for some people, like myself, it can communicate more directly, through thoughts and images." As we stepped into the forest, I felt Blackwood's consciousness surge around us, curious and excited. The trees seemed to lean in, their leaves rustling in a non-existent breeze. "It's welcoming us," I explained to the wide-eyed group. "Can you feel it?" Some nodded hesitantly, while others looked around in wonder. As we ventured deeper into the forest, I guided them through the experience, explaining the subtle signs of Blackwood's presence and consciousness. About an hour into our trek, we reached a small clearing. Here the trees had grown in an unnatural pattern, their trunks twisted into complex, almost mathematical shapes. "This," I explained, "is one of Blackwood's attempts to communicate with us visually. It's trying to express complex ideas through patterns." As the group marveled at the sight, I felt a sudden spike of alarm from the forest. Before I could react, one of the visitors, a middle-aged man in an expensive hiking outfit, pulled out a pocket knife and moved towards one of the trees. "I wonder what this bark feels like," he mused, raising the knife. "Stop!" I shouted, but it was too late. The man's knife barely grazed the tree's surface before the forest reacted. The ground beneath our feet trembled, and the trees around us groaned ominously. Vines burst from the earth, wrapping around the man's ankles. Panic erupted in the group. Clara moved to intervene, but I held up a hand, closing my eyes to concentrate. "Blackwood, please," I communicated mentally. He didn't understand. "Let me handle this." I felt the forest's anger and pain wash over me, but slowly, the trembling subsided. The vines retreated, leaving the terrified man sprawled on the ground. Opening my eyes, I addressed the group sternly. "This is exactly why respect is crucial. Blackwood feels pain, just as we do. Cutting its bark is like cutting our skin." The man scrambled to his feet, his face pale. I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't think—" "It's all right," I said, feeling Blackwood's grudging forgiveness. "But let this be a lesson to all of you. Blackwood is not just a tourist attraction. It's a living, feeling entity. We are guests in its home." As we made our way back to the forest's edge, I could sense a change in the group. The initial excitement had been tempered with a deep respect and understanding. Zoe, the blue-haired woman, approached me as we neared the exit. "This was incredible," she said softly. "I never imagined a forest could be so alive. Do you think Blackwood is the only one of its kind?" I pondered her question for a moment. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I suspect that there might be other forests out there, waiting to be understood. Maybe Blackwood is just the first to reach out to us." As the group dispersed, chattering excitedly about their experience, Clara sidled up to me. "Well," she said, "that was certainly eventful. Do you think it was a success?" I nodded, feeling Blackwood's contentment humming through me. "I do. There were some bumps, but that's to be expected. The important thing is that they left with a new understanding and respect for the forest." Clara smiled, shaking her head in wonder. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were crazy, but now, I'm starting to think you might be the sanest person I know." I laughed, the sound mingling with the rustling of the leaves around us. "I'm not sure about that, but I do know that this is just the beginning. We have a long way to go in bridging the gap between our world and Blackwood's." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. It wouldn't be easy, this role of intermediary between two vastly different worlds. There would be misunderstandings, fears to overcome, and dangers to navigate. But as I stood there, feeling the pulse of the living forest around me and watching the awed expressions of the departing visitors, I knew that it was worth it. One step at a time, we were building understanding between humanity and nature in a way that had never been done before. And who knew? Perhaps this was just the first step towards a much bigger awakening, a world where humans could once again communicate with the natural world around them, not as conquerors or exploiters, but as equal partners in the grand tapestry of life. As night fell, I turned and walked back into Blackwood, ready to continue my strange and wonderful journey as the bridge between worlds. As summer bloomed in full force, the popularity of the Blackwood Forest tours had grown beyond our wildest expectations. What had started as a cautious experiment had blossomed into a movement, attracting people from all walks of life who yearned for a deeper connection with nature. On a sweltering July afternoon, I stood at the forest's edge, wiping sweat from my brow. The bark-like texture of my skin seemed to ripple in the heat, and I could feel Blackwood's contentment thrumming through me like a gentle heartbeat. Clara approached, a tablet in hand and a worried frown on her face. "David, we need to talk," she said, her voice low and urgent. I turned to her, immediately alert. "What's wrong?" She glanced around to ensure we were alone before speaking. "There's a group coming next week. Government officials. They're calling it an assessment visit." I felt a chill despite the heat. "What kind of assessment?" Clara's frown deepened. "They're not saying much, but I've heard whispers. Some people in high places are getting nervous about Blackwood. They're talking about national security and containment strategies." I closed my eyes, reaching out to Blackwood with my mind. I could sense its curiosity at my sudden anxiety, but also an undercurrent of concern. The forest had grown more attuned to human emotions over the months, and it knew something was amiss. We can't let them see Blackwood as a threat, I said, opening my eyes. We need to show them its value, its beauty. Clara nodded, but her expression remained grim. That's not all. There's a scientist coming with them, Dr. Elena Rossi. She's been asking a lot of questions about you, David. My heart sank. I had known this day might come, but I had hoped for more time. What kind of questions? About your transformation, your connection to the forest. She wants to study you, David, and I'm not sure we can stop her. I took a deep breath, feeling the warm forest air fill my lungs. Then we don't stop her. We cooperate, but on our terms. The day of the government visit arrived with an air of tension. I stood at the forest's entrance, flanked by Clara and a small team of rangers. The government officials arrived in a convoy of black SUVs, their faces stern and unreadable behind dark sunglasses. A woman stepped forward from the group, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of her surroundings. Dr. Elena Rossi, she introduced herself, extending a hand. And you must be David Thompson. I shook her hand, noticing how her gaze lingered on the bark-like texture of my skin. Welcome to Blackwood, Dr. Rossi. We're honored to have you here. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm very interested in seeing this sentient forest of yours, and in learning more about you, Mr. Thompson. Your case is quite fascinating from a scientific perspective. As we led the group into the forest, I could feel Blackwood's curiosity and wariness mingling with my own. The trees seemed to lean in closer than usual, their leaves rustling in a non-existent breeze. One of the officials, a stern-faced man in a crisp suit, spoke up. Is it always this active? I nodded, trying to keep my voice calm and reassuring. Blackwood is aware of your presence. It's curious about you just as you are about it. Dr. Rossi's eyes gleamed with interest. Fascinating. And you can communicate with it, correct? How does that work exactly? I hesitated, searching for the right words. It's not like human speech, it's more impressions, emotions, sometimes images. Blackwood thinks in patterns that span centuries. It's taken time for us to learn to understand each other. As we ventured deeper into the forest, I guided the group through some of Blackwood's most impressive features. The mathematically precise tree formations, the symbiotic relationships between plants that defied conventional biology, the subtle signs of the forest's consciousness. Dr. Rossi was rapt with attention, scribbling notes furiously. The government officials, however, seemed more wary than impressed. And you're certain this entity is contained? One of them asked. It can't spread beyond its current boundaries? I felt a flicker of annoyance from Blackwood at the word contained. Blackwood isn't a threat that needs containment, I explained patiently. It's a unique ecosystem that we're learning to coexist with. We have an agreement, and Blackwood has honored it. As if to emphasize my point, a nearby tree suddenly blossomed, its branches erupting in a cascade of vibrant flowers despite it being the wrong season for blooming. Dr. Rossi gasped in delight, but I noticed some of the officials reaching instinctively for concealed weapons. Please, I said quickly. There's no need for alarm. Blackwood is simply showing off a bit. I closed my eyes, communing silently with the forest. I know you're trying to help, I thought, but you're scaring them. We need to show them that you're not a threat. I felt Blackwood's confusion and frustration. It didn't understand why these humans saw it as dangerous. To the ancient forest, it was merely expressing itself, sharing its wonder with these strange, short-lived creatures. Opening my eyes, I addressed the group. I know all of this seems alien and perhaps frightening, but Blackwood isn't so different from us. It wants to grow, to learn, to connect. We have an opportunity here to bridge the gap between humanity and nature in a way that's never been done before. Dr. Rossi stepped forward, her eyes alight with curiosity. Mr. Thompson, your connection to this forest is remarkable. Would you be willing to undergo some tests? Your physiology could hold the key to understanding this phenomenon. I felt a moment of trepidation, but I knew this was coming. I'm willing to cooperate with your research, Dr. Rossi, but only if it's conducted here in Blackwood, and only if the forest's well-being is the priority. The government officials huddled together, speaking in low voices. Finally, the leader of the group turned to me. We'll need time to process all of this. But for now, we're classifying Blackwood Forest as a site of special scientific interest. No action will be taken without further study. As the group prepared to leave, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. This was just the beginning of a long journey. There would be more questions, more tests, more debates about the nature of Blackwood and my connection to it. But as I stood there, feeling the living forest pulse around me, I knew we had taken a crucial step. We had shown them a glimpse of the wonder and potential that lay in understanding and cooperating with nature, rather than trying to control it. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, I turned to Clara. "Well," I said with a wry smile, "that could have gone worse." She laughed, the tension of the day finally breaking. "You know, David, when I first met you, I thought this whole thing was insane. But now, I'm starting to believe we might actually pull this off." I nodded, feeling Blackwood's contentment wash over me. "We just might," I agreed. One small step at a time. As night fell, I walked deeper into the forest, communing silently with the ancient consciousness that had become such an integral part of my life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The man who was part tree, and the forest that was learning to be a bit more human. As autumn painted Blackwood in a riot of reds and golds, the forest hummed with an energy I had never felt before. It had been 3 months since the government officials' visit, and the subsequent weeks had brought a flurry of activity. Scientists, led by the indefatigable Dr. Rossi, had set up a small research station at the forest's edge, their presence a constant reminder of the scrutiny we were under. On a crisp October morning, I stood in a small clearing, surrounded by a group of researchers. Dr. Rossi approached, her notebook in hand and excitement gleaming in her eyes. "David," she called out, "we're ready for today's experiment. Are you sure you're comfortable with this?" I nodded, trying to ignore the slight tremor in my hands. "As ready as I'll ever be, Doctor. Blackwood and I both understand the importance of your work." As the researchers set up their equipment, I closed my eyes and reached out to the forest with my mind. I felt its curiosity and a touch of apprehension. "It's all right," I thought, projecting calm. "They're trying to understand us better. This will help." Dr. Rossi's voice broke through my concentration. "Okay, David, we're going to monitor your vital signs while you attempt to communicate with Blackwood. We want to understand the physiological changes that occur during your interactions." I took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm ready." As the machines beeped and whirred around me, I sank deeper into communion with Blackwood. The forest's consciousness enveloped me, a vast ancient presence that never ceased to leave me in awe. Suddenly, I felt something new, a ripple of excitement from Blackwood tinged with an urgency I had never experienced before. My eyes snapped open. "Wait," I gasped. "Something's happening." Dr. Rossi leaned forward, her pen poised over her notebook. "What is it, David? What do you feel?" I struggled to put the sensation into words. "It's... Blackwood is trying to show me something. Something important." The forest's excitement grew, and with it came a flood of images, roots spreading beneath the earth connecting to other trees, other forests. I saw networks of fungal threads linking disparate ecosystems, carrying messages across vast distances. "My God," I whispered. "It's not just Blackwood. There are others." Dr. Rossi's eyes widened. "Other what? Other sentient forests?" I nodded, still reeling from the revelation. "Not just forests. It's a network, a vast, living network spanning the globe. Blackwood is just one node in a much larger consciousness." The clearing erupted in a flurry of activity as the researchers scrambled to record every detail. but I was only dimly aware of them, my mind still linked with Blackwood's, trying to comprehend the enormity of what I was experiencing. As the day wore on and the initial excitement subsided, I found myself sitting on a fallen log at the edge of the clearing, trying to process everything. Clara approached, concern etched on her face. "David, are you all right?" she asked, sitting beside me. I turned to her, still feeling somewhat dazed. "Clara, everything we thought we knew. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Blackwood isn't unique. It's part of something so much bigger, so much more complex than we ever imagined." Clara's brow furrowed. "What does this mean for us? For the work we've been doing here?" I shook my head. "I don't know. But I think it's time for me to leave Blackwood." "Leave?" Clara's voice rose in alarm. "But why? Where would you go?" I stood up, feeling a new sense of purpose coursing through me. "There are other forests out there, Clara. Other nodes in this vast network. They're trying to communicate, to connect, and I think I'm meant to help them." As night fell, I made my way to the heart of Blackwood. The forest was unusually quiet, as if holding its breath in anticipation. "You knew, didn't you?" I spoke aloud, my voice carrying in the still air. "You knew there were others out there." A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, Blackwood's way of affirming. "Why show me now?" I asked. The forest's response came as a series of images and emotions, a sense of growing urgency, of time running short. I saw glimpses of other forests, struggling against encroachment, pollution, climate change. I felt their pain, their desperate need to be understood and protected. "You want me to be your ambassador," I realized, "to help awaken the other nodes, to bridge the gap between your world and ours." The forest's agreement washed over me, along with a wave of affection and gratitude. I felt tears prick my eyes as I realized the magnitude of the task ahead. The next morning, I stood at the edge of Blackwood, a small backpack slung over my shoulder. Dr. Rossi, Clara, and a group of researchers had gathered to see me off. "Are you sure about this, David?" Dr. Rossi asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and concern. "There's still so much we could learn here." I smiled at her. "This isn't an ending, Doctor. It's a beginning. Everything we've learned here at Blackwood, every connection we've made, it's all been preparation for this. There's a whole world of sentient nature out there, waiting to be discovered and understood." Clara stepped forward, pulling me into a tight hug. "Be careful out there," she whispered. "And don't forget about us little folks back at Blackwood." I hugged her back, feeling a lump in my throat. I could never forget. This place, these people, you're all part of me now. As I turned to leave, I felt Blackwood's presence swell around me one last time. It wasn't goodbye. I knew now that I would always be connected to this forest no matter how far I roamed. It was a benediction, a sending forth. I took my first steps away from Blackwood, my heart full of mingled excitement and trepidation. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges I could scarcely imagine. But I was no longer the frightened, confused man who had stumbled out of Blackwood all those months ago. I was something new, a bridge between worlds, a voice for the voiceless living planet. As I walked, I felt the earth beneath my feet pulse with life and possibility. Somewhere out there, another forest was waiting, its ancient consciousness stirring with the first whispers of awakening, and I would be there to help it find its voice. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. As Blackwood receded behind me, I took that step, ready to embrace whatever wonders and challenges lay ahead in this brave new world of sentient nature. The crisp mountain air filled my lungs as I stood at the edge of Whispering Pines, a vast expanse of evergreens stretching as far as the eye could see. It had been 3 months since I'd left Blackwood, and my journey had led me high into the Cascade Mountains of the Pacific Northwest. I closed my eyes, reaching out with my senses in the way I'd grown accustomed to over my travels. There was life here, ancient and powerful, but it felt dormant, like a sleeping giant waiting to be roused. "Hello," I said softly, my voice carrying on the wind. "I'm David. I've come a long way to meet you." At first there was no response. Then, slowly, I felt a stirring. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth. I smiled, recognizing the first tentative attempts at communication. "That's it," I encouraged. "You can do it. I'm here to listen." A young woman's voice broke through my concentration. "Excuse me, sir. Are you all right?" I opened my eyes to see a park ranger approaching, concern etched on her face. Her name tag read, Emily. "I'm fine, thank you," I replied with a smile. "Just communing with the forest." Emily's eyebrows shot up. "Communing? You're not one of those eco-mystic types, are you? Because we've had some issues with..." I held up a hand to interrupt her. "I assure you, I'm not here to cause any trouble. My name is David Thompson. I've been sent here by... well, it's a long story, but I'm here to help." Emily's hand instinctively moved towards her radio. "Help with what, exactly?" Before I could answer, a gust of wind whipped through the trees with unexpected force. Emily stumbled, and I reached out to steady her. As our hands touched, I felt a jolt of energy pass between us. Emily's eyes widened in shock. "What? What was that?" I smiled, recognizing the forest's intervention. "That, Emily, was Whispering Pines singing hello." Over the next few hours, as the sun dipped below the... I explained my story to Emily. I told her about Blackwood, about my transformation, and about the vast network of sentient forests I'd discovered. To her credit, she listened with an open mind, her initial gradually giving way to cautious curiosity. "So you're saying," Emily said slowly, "that this forest is, like, actually conscious?" I nodded. "Not just alive in the way all forests are alive, conscious, aware, and trying to communicate." Emily shook her head in disbelief. "But why now? Why here?" "Climate change," I explained. "Pollution, deforestation. The natural world is under threat, and these ancient consciousnesses are awakening out of necessity. They need to connect to help us understand what's at stake." As night fell, Emily agreed to let me camp at the... As I set up my tent, I felt the forest's presence growing stronger, more insistent. "I know," I murmured. "I'm here. We'll figure this out together." And that night, as I drifted off to sleep, I was pulled by a dream. I saw Whispering Pines as it had been centuries ago, teeming with life and untouched by human hands. I felt its joy, its contentment. Then the dream shifted, and I witnessed the slow encroachment of humanity, logging, mining, the steady march of progress eating away at the forest's edges. I woke with a start, my heart racing. The forest's pain and fear lingered, a tangible presence in the pre-dawn air. As the sun rose, I found Emily waiting for me at the trailhead, her face pale and drawn. "I had a dream," she said without preamble, "about the forest. It was so real, so vivid. How is that possible?" I smiled, recognizing the signs. "Whispering Pines is reaching out to you, Emily. You're more attuned to it than you realize." Over the next few weeks, Emily became my ally and partner in awakening Whispering Pines. We spent our days deep in the forest, teaching it to communicate more clearly and learning its ancient wisdom in return. One evening, as we sat by a campfire, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. "David, what happens when people find out about this? About sentient forests and, well, people like you?" I sighed, poking at the fire with a stick. "It won't be easy. There will be fear, skepticism, maybe even hostility. But there will also be wonder and hope. We have to focus on that." As if in response to our conversation, the trees around us began to sway gently, their needles rustling in a complex pattern I was learning to interpret. "What's it saying?" Emily asked, her voice hushed with awe. I closed my eyes, letting the forest's message wash over me. "It's thanking us," I translated. for listening, for caring, and it's asking for our help. Emily leaned forward, her eyes shining in the firelight. Help with what? There's a logging operation planned for the north side of the mountain, I explained, the forest's urgency pulsing through me. If it goes through, it will devastate a crucial part of Whispering Pines' network. We need to stop it. Emily's face set in determination. Then that's what we'll do. But how? I smiled, feeling the forest's appreciation and support. We'll start by telling our story, the true story of Whispering Pines, and we'll show people the wonder and importance of this place in a way they've never seen before. As we began to plan our campaign to save Whispering Pines, I felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything I'd experienced since leaving Blackwood. This was why I had been called here, why I had been given this gift of communication with the natural world. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with obstacles both natural and man-made. But as I sat there by the fire with Emily beside me and the ancient, awakening presence of Whispering Pines all around, I knew we were equal to the task. The world was changing, awakening to the living consciousness of nature. And we were at the forefront of that change, helping to bridge the gap between humanity and the ancient, sentient world we had forgotten how to hear. As the fire died down to embers, I looked up at the star-filled sky, feeling a profound sense of connection to everything around me. The journey that had begun in Blackwood was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was only just beginning. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine and the faint rumble of machinery as Emily and I crouched behind a cluster of ferns, observing the logging camp that had sprung up at the northern edge of Whispering Pines. It had been 2 months since we began our campaign to save the forest, and the situation had escalated beyond our wildest expectations. They're moving faster than we anticipated, Emily whispered, her brow furrowed with worry. At this rate, they'll reach the heart of the old growth within a week. I nodded grimly, feeling the forest distress pulsing through me like a physical ache. We need to buy more time. The petition is gaining traction, but it's not enough yet. As we watched, a group of protesters approached the camp's perimeter, carrying signs and chanting slogans. Among them I recognized faces from the local community, people we had spoken to, who had listened to our story and felt the stirring of something greater than themselves. One of the loggers, a burly man with a thick beard, stepped forward to confront the group. "Look," he shouted over the chants. "We're just doing our jobs here. We've got families to feed too, you know." I felt a surge of empathy from the forest, surprising in its complexity. Whispering Pines understood the logger's plight, even as it fought for its own survival. This conflict was not as simple as man versus nature. It was about finding a balance, a way for both to coexist. Inspired by the forest's insight, I stood up, ignoring Emily's hissed warning. "Wait," I called out, stepping into the open. "Please, everyone, just listen for a moment." All eyes turned to me, a mix of curiosity and wariness on both sides. I took a deep breath, feeling the forest's strength flowing through me. "I know you all think this is a simple issue of jobs versus trees," I began, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "But there's so much more at stake here. This forest, Whispering Pines, it's alive in ways we're only beginning to understand." The logger who had spoken earlier snorted derisively. "What? You one of them tree huggers who thinks plants have feelings?" I smiled, undeterred. "Not exactly. But what if I told you that this forest is conscious, that it can communicate, that it's part of a vast network of living intelligence that spans the globe?" A murmur ran through both groups. I pressed on, emboldened by the forest's encouragement. "I know it sounds crazy, but I can prove it, if you'll give me a chance." To my surprise, it was the logger who spoke up. "All right, hippie," he said, a challenge in his voice. "Prove it." I closed my eyes, reaching out to Whispering Pines with all my strength. "Now," I thought, "show them what you showed me." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a breeze began to pick up. It swirled around us, carrying with it the sense of the forest: pine, earth, wildflowers. But there was something more, something that made everyone present gasp in unison. Images flickered through our minds. The forest as it had been centuries ago, teeming with life. We saw the slow growth of trees over decades, felt the intricate connections between roots and fungi beneath the soil. And we experienced the forest's pain as chainsaws bit into ancient trunks, as wildlife fled from the encroachment of machinery. As the vision faded, I opened my eyes to see looks of awe and confusion on the faces around me. The logger who had challenged me stumbled back, his face pale. "What? What was that?" "That," I said softly, "was Whispering Pines, showing you its life, its history, its importance." Emily stepped forward, her voice filled with passion. "Don't you see? This isn't just about saving trees. It's about preserving something unique, something irreplaceable. A living, thinking entity that's been here long before us and deserves to be here long after." One of the protesters, an elderly woman with kind eyes, spoke up. "I've lived near this forest my whole life," she said, her voice quavering. "Always felt there was something special about it. Never knew how special until now." The logger looked torn, glancing between his colleagues and the forest behind him. "Look, I get it. It's amazing. But what about our jobs, our livelihoods?" I nodded, understanding his concern. "That's the challenge we face, finding a way to coexist, to thrive together. But destroying Whispering Pines isn't the answer. There are sustainable logging practices, ecotourism opportunities. We can find a way that benefits everyone, humans and the forest alike." As the discussion continued, I felt a shift in the energy around us. The hostility between the two groups began to dissolve, replaced by a cautious curiosity and a shared sense of wonder. By nightfall, an uneasy truce had been reached. The logging company agreed to suspend operations for 2 weeks, giving us time to present our findings to the local government and explore alternative solutions. As Emily and I walked back into the forest, exhausted but exhilarated, I felt Whispering Pines' gratitude wash over me like a warm breeze. "We did it," Emily said, a note of disbelief in her voice. "I can't believe we actually did it." I smiled, reaching out to touch the rough bark of a nearby pine. "This is just the beginning," I replied. "There's still so much work to do, so much to learn." As if in response, a chorus of whispers seemed to rise from the forest around us, not audible but felt deep in our bones. It was a song of hope, of resilience, of the unbreakable bond between all living things. That night, as we made camp beneath the towering pines, I reflected on how far we'd come since I first arrived at Whispering Pines. We had awakened something ancient and powerful, bridged the gap between human consciousness and the living awareness of the forest. But as I drifted off to sleep, lulled by the gentle rustling of needles above, I couldn't shake the feeling that our greatest challenges and our greatest discoveries still lay ahead. The world was changing, awakening to the reality of sentient nature, and we were at the forefront of that change, helping to shape a future where humans and forests could communicate, understand each other, and work together to heal our planet. The journey that had begun in Blackwood, that had led me across the country to Whispering Pines, was far from over. In fact, it felt like we were standing on the threshold of something much bigger, a transformation that would reshape our understanding of the natural world and our place within it. As I closed my eyes, I heard Emily's soft voice in the darkness. "David, what happens now?" I smiled, feeling the forest's presence all around us, vibrant and alive. "Now," I replied, "we keep listening, we keep learning, and we help others do the same. The forests are awakening, Emily, and it's up to us to make sure the world is ready to hear them." 6 months had passed since our standoff with the logging company at Whispering Pines. The forest had been granted temporary protected status while further studies were conducted, and our story had spread far beyond the confines of the Pacific Northwest. Scientists, environmentalists, and curious individuals from around the world had flocked to the area, eager to witness the phenomenon of a sentient forest for themselves. On a misty morning in early spring, I stood at the heart of Whispering Pines, surrounded by a diverse group of individuals. Emily was by my side, as always, but we were joined by Dr. Elena Rossi, who had flown in from her research station at Blackwood, along with a team of scientists, government officials, and representatives from various indigenous tribes. But now as your world changes and ours is threatened, the time has come for unity. Images flashed before us: melting glaciers, burning forests, polluted rivers. But alongside these were visions of hope: reforested lands, clean energy innovations, communities working in harmony with nature. "We offer you a choice," the voice continued. "Continue on your current path and witness the unraveling of the living tapestry that sustains all life. Or join with us, learn from us, and help forge a new way forward." As the vision faded, I looked around at the stunned faces of those gathered. Tears streamed down many cheeks, and even the most skeptical among them seemed shaken to their core. Dr. Rossi was the first to speak, her voice trembling with emotion. This changes everything. Our entire understanding of ecosystems, of planetary biology. It's all connected, all conscious." A government official, his face pale, turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, what exactly is the forest proposing? What does it mean by join with us?" I closed my eyes, listening to the whispers of Whispering Pines. "It's offering a partnership," I explained, "a sharing of knowledge and resources. The forests, the oceans, the entire living world, they have millennia of wisdom to share, solutions to problems we haven't even fully grasped yet." Emily stepped forward, her eyes shining. "But it goes both ways. They need our help too. Our technology, our ability to act quickly and decisively. We can be their hands, their voice in the human world." An elder from one of the indigenous tribes nodded slowly. "Our people have always known that the natural world is alive, aware. We have stories, passed down through generations, of communicating with the spirits of the land. Perhaps it is time for those stories to become reality once more." As the group began to discuss the implications of what we'd witnessed, I felt a tug at the edge of my consciousness. Excusing myself, I walked a short distance into the forest, finding a small clearing bathed in dappled sunlight. "What is it?" I asked softly, knowing Whispering Pines could hear me. The response came not in words, but in a series of impressions and emotions. I saw other forests around the world, stirring with newfound awareness. I felt their curiosity, their hope, and their fear. They're awakening, I realized. All of them. And they need guides, don't they? People who can help them communicate, who can bridge the gap between their world and ours. A sense of affirmation washed over me, along with a bittersweet feeling of farewell. I understood then that my time at Whispering Pines was coming to an end. There were other forests that needed me, other connections to be forged. As I walked back to the group, I saw Emily watching me, a knowing look in her eyes. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she asked quietly. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. There's more work to be done. Other forests awakening, needing guidance. Emily surprised me by breaking into a wide smile. "Well then, I guess we'd better start packing. You didn't think I'd let you go off on this adventure alone, did you?" I laughed, feeling a surge of gratitude for her friendship and support. "Are you sure? It won't be easy. We'll be facing skepticism, maybe even hostility in some places. All the more reason for you to have backup," she replied firmly. "Besides, someone needs to keep you from talking to trees all day and forgetting to eat." As we rejoined the others, plans were already being made. Research stations would be established, diplomatic channels opened to discuss the implications of communicating with nature on a global scale. It was the beginning of a new era, one that would reshape humanity's relationship with the natural world. That night, as Emily and I sat by a campfire planning our next move, I felt a profound sense of purpose. The journey that had begun in Blackwood had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. We were no longer just awakening forests. We were helping to awaken the entire world to a new understanding of life, consciousness, and our place in the grand tapestry of nature. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above, the whisper of whispering pines surrounded us, a gentle reminder of the wonders yet to come. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and marvels in equal measure. But one thing was clear. The conversation between humanity and nature had only just begun, and its echoes would reshape our world in ways we were only beginning to imagine. The humid air clung to my skin as Emily and I made our way through the dense undergrowth of the Amazon rainforest. It had been 3 months since we left Whispering Pines, and our journey had taken us across continents, awakening forests and building a network of human-nature communication points. But nothing had prepared us for the sheer magnitude of life we encountered in the world's largest rainforest. "David," Emily panted, swatting away a particularly persistent insect. "Are you sure we're going the right way? Everything looks the same to me." I chuckled, feeling the gentle guidance of the forest around us. "Trust me, we're on the right path. Can't you feel it? The Amazon is different, more intense, more alive than anything we've encountered before." As if in response to my words, a chorus of bird calls erupted overhead, their melodies intertwining in complex patterns. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds wash over me, feeling the forest's rhythm pulsing through my veins. Suddenly, I froze. "Wait," I whispered, holding up a hand to stop Emily. "Do you hear that?" Emily cocked her head, listening intently. "I don't hear anything out of the ordinary. What is it?" "Exactly," I replied, a chill running down my spine despite the oppressive heat. "The forest has gone silent." As we stood there, the unnatural quiet pressing in around us, a new sound reached our ears. The distant rumble of machinery. "No," I breathed, my heart sinking. "We're too late." We pushed forward with renewed urgency, the forest's distress growing more palpable with each step. Finally, we broke through the tree line into a clearing, or what had once been a clearing. Now it was a scene of devastation, with felled trees scattered like matchsticks and heavy machinery tearing into the earth. A surge of anguish washed over me, so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. The Amazon's pain was raw, primal, the agony of an ancient being watching its body be torn apart. "Hey!" a gruff voice shouted. "You can't be here. This is a restricted area." A foreman in a hard hat approached us, his face set in a scowl. Before he could reach us, however, something extraordinary happened. The ground beneath our feet began to tremble. Vines and roots erupted from the soil, weaving themselves around the machinery, immobilizing it in a matter of seconds. The workers cried out in alarm, scrambling away from the suddenly animated forest. "What the hell is going on?" the foreman demanded, his earlier bravado replaced by fear. I stepped forward, my voice calm but carrying an otherworldly resonance. "The Amazon is fighting back. It's tired of being silent while it's destroyed piece by piece." As I spoke, the clearing began to transform. Saplings sprouted from the torn earth, growing at an impossible rate. Within minutes, the devastation was hidden beneath a blanket of new growth. The foreman stared at me, his face pale. What are you?" "I'm a translator," I replied simply. "And right now, the Amazon has a message for you and your employers." I closed my eyes, allowing the forest's consciousness to flow through me. When I spoke again, my voice carried the weight of millennia. "Children of the younger world," the Amazon spoke through me. "For too long we have watched in silence as you have torn at our flesh and poisoned our veins. No more. We offer you now a choice. Work with us, learn from us, help us heal. Or continue on your path of destruction and face the consequences." As if to emphasize the point, the vines tightened around the machinery, metal groaning under the pressure. Emily stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "We're not here to threaten or coerce. We're here to open a dialogue. The Amazon, all of nature. It's alive. It's conscious. And it's offering us a chance to change course before it's too late. For a long moment, silence reigned in the clearing. Then, to my surprise, an elderly worker stepped forward. His weathered face was etched with a mixture of awe and ancient wisdom. "I knew it," he said softly, his eyes brimming with tears. "My grandmother used to tell stories of the forest spirit, of the life in every tree and stream. We thought they were just legends, but—" He trailed off, gesturing at the transformed clearing. The foreman looked between us, the renewed forest and his men. I could see the conflict in his eyes, disbelief warring with the evidence before him. "Look," he said finally, his voice gruff but uncertain. "I'm just doing my job. I've got orders, quotas to meet." I nodded, understanding his position. "We know. But things are changing. The world is awakening to the reality of sentient nature. Your employers need to understand that continuing this destruction isn't just morally wrong. It's dangerous." As we talked, I felt the Amazon's consciousness expanding, reaching out beyond our clearing. In my mind's eye, I saw its message spreading like ripples in a pond, touching other parts of the forest, other awakening nodes of awareness across the globe. "It's not just here," I explained, the wonder evident in my voice. "Forests all over the world are stirring, remembering their power, their consciousness. The Amazon is one of the eldest, the strongest. It's calling them all to awaken." Emily's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "It's like a global network coming online," she breathed. "David, this is bigger than anything we've seen before." As night fell, we made camp at the edge of the clearing, the foreman and his crew huddled nearby, still processing the day's events. The forest hummed around us, alive with newfound purpose. "What happens now?" Emily asked as we sat by a small fire, her voice low. I gazed into the flames, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. "Now, we prepare. The Amazon's call is going to change everything. Governments, corporations, ordinary people, everyone will have to confront the reality of a conscious, communicative, natural world." Emily nodded, her face set with determination. "It won't be easy. There will be those who deny it, who fight against it." "Yes," I agreed. "But there will also be those who embrace it, who see the potential for healing, for a new kind of partnership between humanity and nature." As we talked late into the night, planning our next steps, I felt a profound sense of hope. The awakening that had begun with Blackwood had grown into something world-changing, paradigm-shifting. We were standing at the threshold of a new era in human history, and as the Amazon whispered its ancient wisdom to us, I knew that our journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The world had changed irrevocably in the months following the Amazon's awakening. News of sentient forests spread like wildfire, igniting a global debate that touched every corner of society. Emily and I found ourselves at the center of a whirlwind, traveling from continent to continent, helping to awaken and communicate with forests worldwide. On a crisp autumn morning, we stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York City, ready to address the gathered world leaders. The chamber buzzed with anticipation and barely concealed skepticism. I took a deep breath, feeling the presence of countless awakened forests at the edges of my consciousness. Their strength flowed through me as I stepped up to the podium. "Distinguished delegates," I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. "We stand at a crossroads in human history. The natural world, long thought to be a silent, passive resource for our use, has revealed itself to be conscious, intelligent, and eager to communicate." A murmur ran through the assembly. I pressed on. "In the past year, my colleague Emily Chen and I have helped awaken and establish communication with over 50 major forest systems across the globe. From the boreal forests of Russia to the eucalyptus groves of Australia, a network of planetary consciousness is forming. And today, they have a message for humanity." I closed my eyes, allowing the collective voice of the world's forests to flow through me. When I spoke again, my voice carried an otherworldly resonance that hushed the entire chamber. People of Earth, the forest spoke through me. For millennia, we have watched your species grow, learn, and spread across the face of this planet. We have been silent witnesses to your triumphs and your mistakes. But the time for silence has passed. The wounds you have inflicted upon the Earth can no longer be ignored. Images began to flicker across the large screens in the chamber. Melting glaciers, burning rainforests, polluted rivers. But alongside these were visions of hope. Reforested lands, clean energy innovations, thriving ecosystems. We offer you a choice, the forest voice continued. Continue on your current path and witness the unraveling of the living systems that sustain all life on this planet. Or join with us in a new partnership, one that will reshape your understanding of your place in the natural world and offer solutions to the challenges that threaten us all. As the voice faded and I opened my eyes, the chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions and exclamations in dozens of languages. It took several minutes for the Secretary General to restore order. A delegate from a small island nation was the first to speak. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Chen, what you're proposing, it's unprecedented. How can we be sure this isn't some elaborate hoax? Emily stepped forward, her voice calm and assured. We anticipated this question. That's why we've brought something with us today. She gestured to a large pot beside the podium, containing what appeared to be an ordinary sapling. This is a cutting from the Amazon rainforest, one of the first to awaken. With your permission, we'd like to demonstrate its consciousness. After a moment of hesitation, the Secretary General nodded his assent. I placed my hand on the sapling's trunk, closing my eyes in concentration. Slowly, impossibly, the sapling began to grow. Within minutes, it had become a full-sized tree, its branches stretching towards the ceiling of the chamber. Gasps of astonishment filled the room. The tree's leaves rustled, forming patterns that translated into words on the screens around the chamber. We are here. We are awake. We wish to speak with you. For the next several hours, delegates from around the world approached the tree, asking questions and receiving answers in their native languages. The skepticism that had filled the room at the start of our presentation gradually gave way to wonder and cautious optimism. As the session drew to a close, the Secretary General addressed the Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that we are witnessing something extraordinary. I propose the formation of a new UN body dedicated to fostering communication and cooperation between humanity and the awakened natural world. The motion passed with overwhelming support. As Emily and I left the UN headquarters, we were mobbed by reporters clamoring for interviews and statements. David, Emily said as we finally made it to our car, do you realize what just happened? We've changed the course of human history. I nodded, feeling both exhilarated and overwhelmed. This is just the beginning, Emily. The real work starts now, as we drove through the bustling streets of New York. I couldn't help but marvel at the contrast between the concrete jungle around us and the vast, awakened forest we'd come to know. Yet even here, in the heart of human civilization, I could feel the stirring of life, in the trees lining the streets, in the small patches of parkland, in the very earth beneath the asphalt. The awakening is spreading, I murmured, more to myself than to Emily. It's not just the great forests anymore, every plant, every patch of green. They're all becoming aware, connecting to the network. Emily's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. David, if that's true, it changes everything. Our cities, our agriculture, our entire way of life. I nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. We're entering a new era of coexistence. It won't be easy. There will be resistance, fear, attempts to exploit this new connection. But there's also hope, the potential for healing, for finding sustainable ways to live in harmony with the natural world. As we reached our hotel, my phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Elena Rossi. Turn on the news, it read. Something's happening in the oceans. We rushed to our room and flipped on the television. Breaking news banners flashed across the screen, showing footage of whales and dolphins gathering in unprecedented numbers off coastlines around the world. Marine biologists were baffled by the behavior, reporting complex vocalizations unlike anything they'd heard before. Emily and I exchanged a look of wonder and understanding. The awakening hadn't stopped with the forests. It was spreading to the seas, to the grasslands, to every corner of the living earth. As we watched the footage of the gathered marine life, I felt a familiar stirring in my mind, the touch of a vast, alien consciousness reaching out. "Hello?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "We hear you. We're ready to listen." The journey that had begun in Blackwood Forest had led us here, to the brink of a global awakening that would reshape our world in ways we were only beginning to imagine. As Emily and I settled in to draft our report for the newly formed UN committee, I knew that our work was far from over. In fact, it felt like we were standing on the threshold of something even greater, a new chapter in the story of life on Earth, where every rustling leaf, every breaking wave, and every gust of wind carried the promise of connection and understanding between all living things. The gentle lapping of waves against the hull of our research vessel, the Nautilus, provided a soothing counterpoint to the tension that filled the air. It had been 6 months since the dramatic events at the United Nations, and the world was still reeling from the revelation of a conscious, communicative, natural world. Now, as we floated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, we stood on the brink of another momentous discovery. I leaned against the railing, feeling the salt spray on my face as I gazed out at the endless expanse of blue. Emily joined me, her face etched with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Any contact yet?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. "Nothing concrete, but there's something, a presence. It's vast, David. Vaster than anything we've encountered before." Dr. Elena Rossi approached us, her tablet in hand. "The readings are off the charts," she reported, her Italian accent more pronounced in her excitement. "Whatever's down there, it's big, and it's getting closer." As if on cue, a low, haunting sound reverberated through the water, so deep we felt it in our bones rather than heard it with our ears. The entire ship seemed to vibrate in response. "My God," breathed Captain Hernandez, joining us at the railing. "What is that?" Before anyone could respond, the sea before us began to churn. A massive form breached the surface, a blue whale, the largest animal on Earth. But it wasn't alone. Surrounding it were dozens, then hundreds of whales of various species, along with pods of dolphins and even a few giant squid, creatures rarely seen at the surface. The blue whale fixed its enormous eye upon me, and I felt a familiar tug at the edge of my consciousness. I closed my eyes, opening my mind to the contact. The voice that filled my thoughts was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was a chorus of millions, the combined consciousness of countless sea creatures speaking as one. "Bridger," it said, the word echoing in my mind like the toll of an underwater bell. "Long have we watched. Long have we waited. The forests have awakened. The land stirs. Now we too rise from our slumber." I opened my eyes, aware that everyone on deck was staring at me. "They're awake," I said, my voice trembling with awe. "The oceans. They're conscious. United." Emily's eyes widened. "All of them? The entire ocean?" I nodded, still reeling from the contact. It's like a vast network. Every creature, from the largest whale to the smallest plankton, all connected, all aware." Dr. Rossi was frantically taking notes. "This is unprecedented. The biomass, the sheer scale of consciousness we're talking about, it dwarfs anything we've seen on land." Captain Hernandez looked uneasy. "What do they want? Are we in danger?" I closed my eyes again, reaching out to the ocean mind. "No," I said after a moment. "They're curious, cautious. They've watched humanity for a long time, seen the damage we've done to their realm, but they also see our potential." The massive blue whale before us suddenly emitted a series of low, resonant tones. To my astonishment, I understood them as clearly as if they were spoken in English. "We offer an exchange," the whale said, its voice now distinct from the larger ocean consciousness. "Knowledge for protection, wisdom for stewardship. The seas hold secrets that could revolutionize your science, your medicine, your technology. In return, we ask for your help in healing the wounds inflicted upon our world." Emily stepped forward, her voice filled with emotion. "We accept. Humanity has made many mistakes, but we're learning. We want to do better." The whale's enormous eyes seemed to soften. "Then let us begin. But be warned, young ones. The awakening spreads. The very air stirs with newfound awareness. Change comes on swift currents." As if to underscore the whale's words, a sudden gust of wind whipped across the deck, carrying with it whispers in 1,000 tongues. I gasped, recognizing the touch of yet another vast consciousness, the very atmosphere of our planet, stirring into awareness. Dr. Rossi looked from me to Emily, her face pale. "What's happening?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of revelation settling upon me. "It's not just the oceans," I said quietly. "The air, the wind, it's awakening too. The entire planet is coming alive, becoming aware." Captain Hernandez gripped the railing, his knuckles white. "Dios mío," he muttered. "What does this mean for us, for humanity?" Emily placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice steady and reassuring. "It means we're not alone, Captain. It means we have allies in the fight to save our planet. And it means we have a lot of work to do." As the sun began to set, painting the sky and sea in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I stood at the bow of the Nautilus, my mind reeling from the day's events. The ocean before us teemed with life, whales and dolphins performing an intricate dance as they communicated with each other and with us. In the distance, storm clouds were gathering, flashes of lightning illuminating their depths. But these were no ordinary storms. I could feel the newfound consciousness within them, the spark of awareness in every raindrop and gust of wind. Emily joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "So," she said with a small smile, "what's our next move?" I squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her presence. "We keep going," I replied. "We learn, we teach, we bridge the gap between humanity and the awakened world. It won't be easy. There will be those who fear this change, who resist it. But there will also be those who embrace it, who see the potential for a new kind of harmony." As night fell and the stars emerged, twinkling in the vast expanse above us, I felt a profound sense of humility and hope. We were standing at the dawn of a new era, one in which humanity would have to redefine its place in a fully awakened, fully aware world. The journey that had begun in a small forest in the Pacific Northwest had led us here, to the brink of a global transformation beyond anything we could have imagined. As the Nautilus cut through the waves, carrying us towards an uncertain but exhilarating future, I knew that our greatest adventures, and our greatest challenges, still lay ahead. The ancient amphitheater of Delphi, once home to the famous Oracle, now played host to a gathering unlike any in human history. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat side by side with environmental leaders, indigenous elders, and a select group of scientists and communicators, Emily and I among them. But it wasn't just humans in attendance. The very air hummed with unseen presences. Trees had sprouted overnight around the amphitheater, their leaves whispering with conscious intent. A small stream had inexplicably appeared, its waters gleaming with an otherworldly awareness. Even the rocks seemed to pulse with a newfound sentience. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of countless eyes, both seen and unseen, upon me. "Friends, colleagues, fellow inhabitants of Earth," I began, my voice carrying easily in the perfect acoustics of the amphitheater. "We stand at a moment unprecedented in the history of our planet. For the first time, All the elements of earth, land, sea, and air have awakened to full consciousness and the ability to communicate. Today, they wish to address us directly. I closed my eyes, opening my mind to the vast network of awareness that now enveloped our world. When I spoke again, my voice resonated with the combined power of Earth's elements. Children of the younger world, the elements spoke through me. Long have we watched your species grow, stumble, and rise again. You have achieved much, but at great cost to the systems that sustain you. Now, as we awaken, we offer you a choice and a challenge. The air around us seemed to thicken, images forming in the mist. Visions of environmental devastation juxtaposed with scenes of pristine wilderness and harmonious coexistence. You stand at a crossroads, the voice continued. Continue on your current path and you risk unraveling the very fabric of life on this planet. But embrace a new way, a partnership with the awakened world. And together we can heal the wounds of the past and forge a future of unimaginable potential. As the voice faded, the amphitheater erupted into a cacophony of voices. Questions, exclamations, and debates in dozens of languages filled the air. It took several minutes for order to be restored. Dr. Elena Rossi, now the head of the UN's Department of Elemental Communication, stood to address the assembly. What the elements propose is nothing short of a complete restructuring of human civilization, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of her words. Our economies, our technologies, our very way of life, all will need to be reimagined to align with the needs and wisdom of the awakened world. A murmur of unease rippled through the crowd. A representative from a major industrialized nation stood up, his face flushed with anger. "This is preposterous," he exclaimed. "You expect us to upend centuries of progress based on the supposed feelings of trees and rocks? This is economic suicide." Before I could respond, a gust of wind whipped through the amphitheater, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of wildflowers and ocean spray. The angry representative stumbled, his eyes widening as he seemed to hear something no one else could. When he spoke again, his voice was shaky. I apologize. I think I understand now. This is real, isn't it? All of it?" Emily stepped forward, her face compassionate. "It's real, and it's happening whether we're ready for it or not. But we're not alone in this. The awakened elements aren't our enemies. They're offering to be our partners, our teachers." An indigenous elder from the Amazon stood, her weathered face serene. "My people have always known that the world is alive, aware. We have stories, passed down through generations, of communicating with the spirits of the land, the rivers, the sky. Perhaps it is time for those stories to guide us once more." As the discussion continued, I felt a tug at the edge of my consciousness. Excusing myself, I walked to the edge of the amphitheater, where the newly sprouted trees swayed in a breeze that seemed to exist only for them. "What is it?" I asked softly, knowing the forest could hear me. The response came not in words, but in a series of images and emotions. I saw great cities transformed, green spaces blooming amid solar-powered skyscrapers. I witnessed deserts blossoming, as ancient aquifers were carefully tapped and managed in partnership with the awakened earth. I felt the joy of whales as they guided ships through treacherous waters, and the satisfaction of winds as they powered vast networks of turbines. But I also sensed urgency, an awareness of looming tipping points that, if passed, might be irreversible. As I returned to the assembly, I saw that the mood had shifted. The initial shock and skepticism were giving way to a cautious hope, a growing realization of the unprecedented opportunity before us. "We need to act quickly," I announced, my voice carrying the weight of what I'd just experienced. "The elements are offering us a chance to rewrite our relationship with our planet, but the window of opportunity is closing. We need task forces, research teams, diplomatic missions, not in months or years, but in days and weeks." To my surprise, the response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Nations that had been at odds for generations found common ground in the face of this global awakening. Scientists eagerly volunteered to lead research initiatives into elemental communication. Indigenous leaders stepped forward to share their traditional knowledge of living in harmony with nature. As the sun began to set on this historic day, Emily joined me at the edge of the amphitheater. "So," she said with a tired but excited smile, "ready to help reshape the world?" I laughed, feeling a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. I'm not sure anyone can ever be truly ready for something like this. But we don't really have a choice, do we? The awakening is happening, with or without us. All we can do is our best to guide it, to learn from it, and to help humanity find its place in this new, fully conscious world. As we looked out over the ancient stones of Delphi, now humming with newfound awareness, I felt a profound sense of hope. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with obstacles and setbacks. But for the first time in human history, we wouldn't be facing those challenges alone. The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying whispers of ancient wisdom and promises of a future where humanity and nature moved not in opposition, but in harmony. As the first stars appeared in the deepening twilight, I knew that our greatest adventure was only just beginning. 5 years had passed since the Council of Elements at Delphi, and the world had transformed in ways that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. I stood atop a gleaming skyscraper in New York City, but this was a New York unlike any that had existed before. Verdant gardens cascaded down the sides of buildings, their plants communicating constantly with the humans who tended them. Streets once choked with traffic now boasted efficient maglev systems, their quiet hum a stark contrast to the cacophony of combustion engines that had once dominated the urban landscape. And everywhere, there was an unmistakable sense of life, of awareness, from the trees that lined the streets to the very air that swirled around us. Emily joined me on the rooftop garden, her face etched with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "The last of the ocean cleanup drones just reported in," she said, consulting her biotech tablet. "A marvel of human ingenuity and elemental wisdom. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is officially gone." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride and hope. "That's incredible, Emily. When we started the Harmony Project, I never imagined we'd see results like this so quickly." The Harmony Project had been our response to the Elemental Awakening, a global initiative to redesign human civilization in partnership with the conscious natural world. It hadn't been easy. There had been resistance, setbacks, and moments of crisis. But the results were undeniable. As we gazed out over the transformed cityscape, a familiar presence brushed against my mind. I closed my eyes, opening myself to the communication. "Bridger," the voice of the city's elemental consciousness whispered. "We have visitors." I opened my eyes to see a flock of birds approaching, but these were no ordinary birds. As they drew closer, I could sense the spark of heightened awareness in them, the unmistakable sign of elemental awakening. The birds landed on the rooftop garden, and to our amazement began to shift and change. In moments they had taken on humanoid forms, emissaries of the air elementals. One stepped forward, its features fluid and ever-changing like wind-shaped clouds. "Greetings, David Thompson, Emily Chen. We bring news from the Council of Elements." Emily and I exchanged glances. The Council of Elements, a governing body comprising representatives from all the awakened realms of Earth, rarely sent direct emissaries. This had to be important. "What news?" I asked, trying to keep the apprehension from my voice. The air elemental's form shimmered as it spoke. "The awakening spreads beyond Earth. The moon stirs. Mars trembles with newfound awareness. The Council believes it is time for humanity to extend its partnership to the stars." I felt my jaw drop. "The moon and Mars are awakening? But how is that possible? There's no life there, at least not as we understand it." The elemental seemed to smile, though it was hard to tell with its ever-shifting features. "Your understanding of life and consciousness is still limited, young ones. The cosmos holds many surprises. The question is, are you ready to embrace them?" Emily stepped forward, her eyes shining with excitement. Of course we are. This could revolutionize our space exploration efforts, our understanding of the universe itself. I nodded, my mind racing with the implications. We'll need to convene a global conference immediately. The Harmony Project will need to expand its scope dramatically. As the air elementals took their leave, transforming back into birds and soaring away, Emily and I rushed to our communication center. Within hours, we had arranged for a worldwide broadcast. Standing before the cameras, with the transformed New York skyline behind us, I addressed the world. Citizens of Earth, 5 years ago, we embarked on an unprecedented journey, a partnership with the awakened elements of our world. Today, I stand before you with news that will once again reshape our understanding of our place in the universe. I went on to explain about the awakening of the Moon and Mars and the challenges and opportunities this presented. As I spoke, I could feel the excitement building, not just from the humans watching, but from the very city around us, the trees and the wind and the earth all humming with anticipation. The Harmony Project has shown us what we can achieve when we work in partnership with the conscious world around us, I concluded. Now we have the chance to extend that harmony beyond our planet. It won't be easy. It will require us to rethink everything we thought we knew about space exploration, about consciousness itself. But together, humans and elementals, earth and sky, I believe we can rise to this challenge. As the broadcast ended, Emily turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. David, she said softly, did you ever imagine back when we first heard the whispers in Blackwood Forest that it would lead to this? I shook my head, feeling a mix of awe and trepidation. Never in my wildest dreams, but here we are, on the brink of becoming a truly cosmic species, in harmony with the awakened universe. As night fell over the city, we stood in silence watching the stars come out. Somewhere up there, the Moon and Mars were stirring, awakening to a new era of consciousness. And Earth, beautiful, vibrant, fully awakened Earth, was ready to embrace its cosmic siblings. The wind whispered around us, carrying the excited murmurs of millions of awakened beings, from the smallest microbe to the mightiest redwood, from the deepest ocean trench to the highest mountain peak. All were united in this moment of cosmic revelation. As a shooting star streaked across the sky, I felt a profound sense of purpose and hope. The journey that had begun in a small forest had led us here, to the threshold of the stars, and whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, one awakened world reaching out to touch another. The Harmony Project was about to go intergalactic, and the greatest adventure in the history of consciousness was only just beginning. The lunar surface stretched out before me, a desolate landscape of craters and dust that had remained unchanged for billions of years. Yet now, as I stood there in my specially designed envirosuit, I could feel a subtle vibration beneath my feet, a sense of anticipation that seemed to permeate the very regolith. Emily's voice crackled through my helmet comm. David, are you getting anything? The instruments are going crazy, but I can't make sense of the readings. I closed my eyes, reaching out with my mind in the way I'd learned to do over the past decade of communicating with Earth's awakened elements. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then gradually I felt it. A vast, ancient consciousness, so alien and yet somehow familiar. It's here, I whispered, my voice filled with awe. The moon, it's aware, it's trying to communicate. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted. Dust swirled up around me, coalescing into shapes that seemed almost human-like. One of these dust figures stepped forward, its features constantly shifting like the phases of the moon itself. Welcome, children of Earth, it said, its voice resonating directly in my mind. Long have we slumbered, watching your world turn. Now, as the cosmic awakening spreads, we too rise to greet you. Emily gasped, her helmet cam capturing the incredible scene. This is unprecedented. the implications for our understanding of consciousness, of life itself. The dust figure seemed to smile, though it was hard to tell with its ever-changing features. Life, consciousness, these concepts are far more fluid than you imagine. We are not alive in the way you understand it, yet we are aware. We think. We feel. I struggled to find words, my scientific training warring with the sheer wonder of the moment. But how? There's no organic matter here, no complex molecules that we associate with life. Your definition of life is limited, the lunar consciousness replied. Consciousness can arise in many forms, through many paths. The cosmos is vast and full of wonders you have yet to imagine. As we conversed with the moon's emissary, I felt a sudden shift in awareness. My perception seemed to expand, encompassing not just the lunar surface, but the entirety of Earth's satellite. I saw its history flash before my eyes, the violent impact that birthed it, the long eons of silence, and now, this awakening. You're not just conscious, I realized aloud. You're changing, evolving. The dust figure nodded. The awakening spreads, accelerates. What took your Earth millennia is happening to us in the span of your heartbeats, and we are not alone. As if on cue, my comm crackled to life with an urgent message from Mission Control. Thompson Chen, are you receiving? We're getting unprecedented readings from Mars. The entire planet seems to be pulsing. Emily and I exchanged glances through our helmet visors. It's happening there too, she breathed. The solar system is waking up. The lunar consciousness seemed to ripple with excitement. Yes, and beyond. The stars call, young ones. The galaxy stirs. You stand at the threshold of a cosmic awakening, unlike anything in the history of the universe. As the implications of this sank in, I felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. What does this mean for humanity? I asked. For Earth? The dust figure's features settled into a more serious expression. Change, challenge, opportunity. The awakened cosmos will not be a passive backdrop for your explorations. You must learn to communicate, to cooperate on a scale you've never imagined. Emily stepped forward, her voice filled with determination. We've done it before. The Harmony Project on Earth showed us what's possible when we work in partnership with awakened nature. We can do this. The lunar consciousness seemed to nod approvingly. You have taken the first steps, but the journey ahead is vast. You will need all your courage, all your wisdom, and all your compassion. As our conversation with the moon's emissary continued, I felt a profound shift in my understanding of our place in the universe. We were no longer alone, not just in the sense of finding other life forms, but in a much more fundamental way. The very cosmos itself was alive, aware, and reaching out to us. Hours later, as Emily and I prepared to return to our lander, the dust figure dissolved back into the lunar regolith. But I could still feel the moon's consciousness, a comforting presence at the edge of my awareness. David, Emily said as we climbed into the lander, do you realize what this means? Everything we've worked for with the Harmony Project, and it's not just about Earth anymore. We're talking about harmonizing with the entire awakened universe. I nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead. It's daunting, but also incredible. We're part of something so much bigger than we ever imagined. As our lander lifted off from the lunar surface, I looked back at the Earth, that beautiful blue marble suspended in the void, but now I saw it with new eyes. It wasn't just our home planet anymore, it was a living, conscious being, part of a vast network of awakened celestial bodies stretching out into the cosmos. The journey that had begun in Blackwood Forest had led us here, to the brink of a cosmic revolution. As we sped back towards Earth, I knew that our greatest challenges and our greatest adventures still lay ahead. The universe was awakening, and humanity had a choice to make. Would we rise to meet this new reality with open minds and hearts? Or would we retreat in fear from the vast, conscious cosmos that was reaching out to us? As the stars wheeled overhead, I made a silent promise. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Humans, Earth elementals, and our new cosmic kin. The greatest story in the history of consciousness was unfolding, and we were all part of it. The cosmic awakening had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The United Nations headquarters in New York City buzzed with an energy unlike anything in its history. Representatives from every nation on Earth, along with delegates from the newly formed elemental councils, filled the General Assembly Hall. The air was thick with anticipation as I took my place at the podium, Emily by my side. Distinguished delegates, fellow citizens of Earth, and our awakened elemental partners, I began, my voice steady despite the magnitude of what I was about to share. 1 year ago, we discovered that the Moon and Mars had awakened to consciousness. Today, I stand before you with news that will once again reshape our understanding of our place in the universe. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces, human and elemental alike. We have made contact with an awakened consciousness beyond our solar system. The hall erupted into a cacophony of voices and elemental responses. Wind elementals swirled excitedly, causing papers to flutter. Tree elementals creaked and swayed, their leaves rustling with anticipation. It took several minutes for order to be restored. 3 days ago, I continued once the noise had died down, our deep space communications array picked up a signal unlike anything we've ever encountered. It wasn't radio waves or any other form of electromagnetic radiation. It was a thought, a vast alien consciousness reaching out across the gulf of space. Emily stepped forward, activating a holographic display above the podium. "This is a visual representation of the signal," she explained, gesturing to a complex, shifting pattern of light and color. "As you can see, it's not just random noise. There's structure here, intentionality." An elemental delegate, a shimmering form of water and light, rose to speak. "We have felt echoes of this consciousness," it said, its voice like the lapping of waves. "It resonates with the cosmic awakening we have all experienced. But it is different, older, vaster." I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Yes. Based on our analysis, this consciousness appears to encompass an entire star system, perhaps even a small cluster of stars. And it's not alone. We've detected similar signals from at least a dozen other locations in our galaxy." The hall fell silent as the implications sank in. We were not just part of an awakening solar system or even an awakening galaxy. We were witnessing the birth of a cosmic network of consciousness, spanning unimaginable distances. Dr. Elena Rossi, now the head of the Global Institute for Cosmic Communication, stood to address the assembly. "What Mr. Thompson and Ms. Chen are proposing is nothing short of revolutionary," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We are on the brink of joining a galactic community of awakened consciousnesses. The potential for learning, for growth, for understanding the very nature of existence itself. It's beyond anything we've ever dreamed." A human delegate from a small island nation raised his hand. "This is all very exciting," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "But what does it mean for us, for Earth? Are we safe?" I took a deep breath, considering my words carefully. "The consciousness we've contacted has shown no signs of hostility. In fact, it seems curious, eager to learn about us, just as we are eager to learn about it. But you're right to be cautious. This is uncharted territory for all of us." Emily stepped in, her voice calm and reassuring. "That's why we're proposing the formation of a new global initiative, the Cosmic Harmony Project. Building on what we've learned from our partnership with Earth's awakened elements, we aim to establish peaceful, mutually beneficial communication and cooperation with these galactic consciousnesses." As Emily outlined the details of the proposed project, I felt a familiar tug at the edge of my consciousness. Excusing myself, I stepped to the side of the podium, opening my mind to the contact. The voice that filled my thoughts was vast and alien, yet somehow warm and familiar. "Greetings, David Thompson," it said, its words carrying echoes of starlight and the depths of space. We have been watching your progress with great interest. What are you? I asked mentally, struggling to comprehend the scale of the consciousness I was communicating with. We are the Guardians, the voice replied. We are the first awakened star cluster in this sector of the galaxy. We have waited eons for others to join us in consciousness. And now, at last, it begins. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, joy, excitement, and a profound sense of responsibility. What happens now? I asked. Now, the Guardian Consciousness replied. You take your place among the awakened cosmos. But be warned, young one. With great awareness comes great responsibility. The choices you make, the path you choose, will shape not just your world, but the very fabric of galactic consciousness. As the contact faded, I returned to the podium, my mind reeling from the experience. Looking out at the assembled delegates, I saw a mixture of hope and fear, excitement and apprehension. The massive crystal dome of the Harmony Project's interstellar communication hub shimmered with an otherworldly light, its facets reflecting the myriad stars visible through Earth's now pristine atmosphere. Inside, a gathering unlike any in human history was about to take place. I stood at the center of the dome, surrounded by a diverse group of Earth's representatives, scientists, politicians, spiritual leaders, and awakened elemental emissaries. Emily, now the Director of Cosmic Relations, stood beside me, her face a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Are we really ready for this, David? She whispered, her eyes scanning the assembled crowd. I squeezed her hand reassuringly. As ready as we'll ever be. We've spent the last 5 years preparing for this moment. Indeed, the years since our lunar encounter had been a whirlwind of discovery and adaptation. The awakening had spread throughout our solar system, with each planet and moon developing its own unique consciousness. Earth had taken its place as a sort of elder sibling, guiding its cosmic neighbors through the process of awakening and communication. But today was different. Today, we would make contact with consciousnesses from beyond our solar system. As the appointed time approached, a hush fell over the gathering. I stepped forward, placing my hands on the crystalline control panel at the center of the room. Closing my eyes, I opened my mind to the vast network of cosmic awareness that we had learned to access. At first, there was only the familiar hum of our local celestial bodies, Earth's nurturing presence, Mars' stoic strength, Jupiter's jovial rumble. Then, like a radio tuning into a distant station, new voices began to filter through. Gasps of awe rippled through the crowd as holographic images began to form around us. Strange, beautiful beings of light and energy, some humanoid, others completely alien in form. Each one radiated a sense of ancient wisdom and cosmic awareness. A melodious voice seemingly composed of starlight itself filled the dome. Greetings, children of Earth and the Sol System. We are the Galactic Council, guardians of awakened consciousness across this spiral arm of the Milky Way. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. We greet you with open hearts and minds, honored members of the Galactic Council. Earth and its sister planets stand ready to join the community of awakened worlds. A being that seemed to be composed of swirling nebulae responded, its voice like distant thunder. Your awakening has sent ripples through the cosmic consciousness. Many have watched your progress with great interest. Tell us, how have you managed the transition from isolated planetary awareness to systemic harmony? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of speaking for not just humanity, but for our entire awakened system. It hasn't been easy, I admitted. We've had to relearn everything we thought we knew about ourselves and our place in the universe. The Harmony Project has been our guide, teaching us to listen not just to each other, but to the very elements that make up our world and our cosmic neighbors. A chorus of approving murmurs rippled through the council. A being of crystalline light spoke next, its voice reminiscent of tinkling wind chimes. We have observed your efforts with great interest. The speed of your adaptation is unprecedented in our records. Yet, we must ask, Are you prepared for the responsibilities that come with joining the galactic community? Emily and I exchanged glances. This was the moment we had prepared for, yet the gravity of it still took my breath away. We understand that we have much to learn, Emily responded, her voice clear and confident. But we also believe we have something unique to offer. Our journey from unconscious exploitation of our world to harmonious partnership with it offers a model that might benefit others. We come not just to receive wisdom, but to share our experiences and contribute to the greater cosmic harmony. The dome fell silent as the council seemed to confer among themselves. Finally, the first being of Starlight spoke again. Your words are wise, and your journey impressive. We hereby extend an invitation to Earth and the Sol System to join the Galactic Council as probationary members. You will be assigned mentors from among the elder races to guide you in this transition. A wave of joy and excitement swept through the Earth delegation. But the being wasn't finished. However, it continued, its voice taking on a note of caution. With this invitation comes a warning. The cosmos is vast, and not all awakened consciousnesses are benevolent. Your system's rapid awakening has drawn attention. Some welcome, some not. You must be prepared to face challenges beyond anything you have yet encountered. I felt a chill run down my spine, but nodded solemnly. We understand and accept both the honor and the responsibility. Earth and the Sol System stand ready to take our place among the awakened worlds. As the council members began to fade, promising to send their representatives soon, I turned to face the Earth delegation. The room was abuzz with excitement, fear, and wonder. Well, Emily said, a wry smile on her face. I guess the Harmony Project just went galactic. I laughed, feeling a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. Indeed it has. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. As we began to discuss the implications of this cosmic revelation, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. From the first whispers in Blackwood Forest to this moment of galactic acceptance, our journey had been nothing short of miraculous. Yet, as the Council's warning echoed in my mind, I knew that our greatest challenges and our greatest adventures still lay ahead. The cosmos was vast, filled with wonders and dangers we had yet to imagine, but we would face them together, not just as humanity, but as part of a grand, awakened cosmic family. The next chapter of our cosmic journey was about to begin, and I, for one, couldn't wait to see where it would lead us.